And welcome in here to Fox 5 and Fox 5's coverage of the 2024 presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Now, what we all just watched was, 90 minutes of these two candidates in a room with two moderators going over a range of questions for the last hour and a half. So let's kind of just go back to the beginning of when this started, shortly after 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tonight. Both candidates walked in to the debate room at the U.S. Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, initially, when Donald Trump walked in, there was a big question there. The question was going to be, are these two, going to shake hands? Remember, they didn't do that in the previous debate between President Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They both walked in at that venue and then walked right to their lecterns in Atlanta, Georgia. Tonight, there was something different, though, right at the top of this debate. Trump appeared to walk directly towards his lectern, but then the Vice President Kamala Harris walked past her lectern and over to Trump and shook his hand. So, right off the bat, there was some gamesmanship of sort. Harris asserting that handshake was going to take place, and in fact it did. So the first question tonight in this debate that was laid out that they would have 2 minutes to answer the questions and 1 minute for rebuttals. In the give and take of the actual debate, though, that's not really, quite how it shook out, because there were numerous times where either Donald Trump or Kamala Harris said that they were going to need extra time, at the end to respond to this or that. For the most part, the moderators were able to keep this on track, but it did appear several times like the rules of this debate were given some flex in order to have a back and forth between these two candidates. So the very first question that started shortly after 9:03 p.m. was about the economy and costs in the country. And it was interesting because it echoed a debate from 1980. And that was a debate, with Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. And Ronald Reagan's probably the perennial question that has ever been asked in any presidential debate. His statement, Reagan, back now 44 years ago, was, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" Now, that is a question that has been repeated again and again and again and again throughout presidential elections ever since. Challengers have always used it as a way to point out what they saw as the incumbents' failings. Incumbents have used it to boost their own record and talk about the progress they believe they have been made. So that question was put to Kamala Harris tonight first, and it was really directed in large part as an economic question, because, as you know, it's no secret that while the White House and the administration has been saying that they have positive economic news to point to, and we might even have, a rate cut by the Federal Reserve Board by the end of this month, the reality of a lot of people's lives right now are saying that, while the economists and the smart people can point to all this data that says the economy is heading in the right direction, that when you actually talk to people, go to a supermarket parking lot, people are saying that their paychecks just aren't going as far as they used to go, paycheck to paycheck every 2 weeks. So this economic question is key for both Democrats and Republicans to figure out, as voters are looking at these two candidates, which one is going to do the better job for them on making that paycheck go further and reducing prices. So Harris's answer off the top tonight was, that she was raised as a middle-class child, and then quickly she pivoted to what she says is her specifics of an opportunity economy. Now, Harris has faced criticism in the past of not being specific about what some of her plans may be. So she talked about a tax credit for small businesses right off the top, $50,000 for reductions to small businesses. She also talked about a plan that she has to provide $6,000 for parents of newborns. She went into this, on the one hand, boosting what she says would be this growth opportunity economy, but then quickly pivoted to what she saw as a contrast with Donald Trump, saying that Trump was going to hurt the economy if he were to go proceed with a plan to raise and keep tariffs on foreign countries bringing goods into the United States. She says that would actually hurt the American consumer, but then went on to say, that his plan for the economy is that he would be giving tax cuts to billionaires. And this was, really the first, a firing line in this debate between Harris and Trump tonight over the economy. Trump reacted very quickly to that, saying, number one, that if the Biden administration didn't like the tariffs that the Trump administration had put into place, why were some of them still in place 3.5 years later? He also went on to say that they had never seen inflation like this before, and then went on to raise inflation rates that he had said prices went up, and he mentioned prices had gone up 50%, 60%, 70%, and returned to one of his previous arguments that immigrants coming into the United States illegally are taking jobs specifically from African Americans, and then pivoted away again to talking about immigration and how that immigration was fueling crime levels in the country. And it was at this point, Harris, it appeared to be a premeditated way of going after and framing what Donald Trump said. And she had kind of tried this line out in Pittsburgh the other day when they were talking about her preparations for this debate. She had said that voters were going to hear from what she said was the same old playbook from Donald Trump, and that he had left office with some of the highest unemployment. The pandemic was out of control, she said, and the insurrection on January 6th, 2021, in her words, was some of the greatest peril the domestic United States had ever seen since the Civil War. Trump immediately responded to that. He called that a lie. He said, in fact, that in his view, he had the greatest economy, that one he felt he didn't get enough credit for. He felt he did a good job on the pandemic, particularly in the construction of ventilators and providing not only ventilators to the people across the United States, but also to countries around the world that were also dealing with the situation with the pandemic. Now, he said repeatedly that Harris does not have a plan, not only for inflation, but also for things like unemployment, and also for the economic plans that at the top of the debate she had said that were endorsed by economists at the Wharton School of Business. So this seemed to kind of strike a nerve with Donald Trump, and he quickly pointed out that he actually attended Wharton, that in his view, economists had said that he had built the greatest economy the world has ever seen, and that he was prepared to do it again. There was some back and forth after that over tariffs. One of the questions that was put to the former president was, well, if you go and you put these tariffs in place and you create a situation where companies that want to send goods into the United States are now going to have to add this tariff to the price of that item, wouldn't that eventually hurt the economy of everyday Americans? His response to that was no, because he had said that the tariffs were actually changing the business practices of competitors to the United States, and companies that he said were moving factories outside of the domestic United States instead of actually building factories here. And he says by having a vigorous tariff program that would actually encourage more overseas businesses to do business here and manufacturing here in the United States rather than shipping those jobs overseas. He also had a couple of direct attacks on Harris in this section, calling her a Marxist, saying that she was bad on immigration, and that the crime that illegal immigration could bring in could also lead to even worse levels of crime in the United States. After that, the moderators pivoted away from immigration and away from the economy. Abortion took center stage. Now, as you know, this has been a firing line ever since the Dobbs decision from the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. So Harris basically looked at the camera directly with a direct address and said that she did not believe it is Donald Trump who should be making decisions about women's health. And Trump, at this point, had started to make some comments about abortion at one point, theorizing that babies could be killed after they are born. He was fact-checked on that point by the moderator, but this did lead to another back and forth between he and Harris over whether or not he supported IVF, fertilization treatment, and he said he did, but he did not directly say whether or not he would sign a national abortion ban, and this did lead later on to some conjecture, because he was asked, about J.D. Vance's comments, his vice presidential nominee, and he had said flat out that he had not discussed this with J.D. Vance, so he didn't know exactly if Vance was briefed in on where his position on this. Harris then was asked about immigration. She talked about, whether or not her immigration policies and the immigration policies of the Biden administration actually caused more problems like fentanyl and other crimes. She had said actually, in her view, that this is an issue that has touched a lot of Americans, but she went away from that to a comment that really did tend to strike a tone in Donald Trump, is when she started talking about his rallies. She said a very odd thing for a presidential candidate that you don't often hear in these kinds of debates. She actually told viewers that she wanted people to go to one of Donald Trump's rallies, because she had said that you were not going to hear him talk about the issues, that you were going to hear him talking about, fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter, and there was this odd exchange about the eating of dogs at one point, which once again led to a fact check by the moderator in this debate. Harris used that as an example to say that, if you pay attention to what she saw as, Trump's meandering on some of these things, that it is one of the reasons she said that there were several high-profile Republicans, such as Dick Cheney, John Kelly, H.R. McMaster, and former Secretary of Defense Esper, who all served in, or Republicans or people who have served in the Trump administration, who have now gone on to say that they do not want him to have a second term at the White House. And as you know, Dick Cheney this past week announced that he was in fact going to be voting for Kamala Harris. Trump's answer to that was basically, well, these are all people that have a vested interest against him because he had fired them from their jobs. And one of the criticisms former president had of both President Biden and former the Vice President Kamala Harris is that he says that they don't fire people that are doing bad jobs. And Trump said one of the reasons he had so many of these people leave his administration was because he had dispatched them quickly when he decided that they were not doing the job that he wanted them to do. One of the things that came up locally in Washington, D.C. was this question about the insurrection. Trump claimed several times that it had nothing to do with the insurrection, that he gave a speech the afternoon of January 6th and then had gone, he says, to the mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, and Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, saying that he would like to give them 10,000 soldiers, and repeatedly shifted blame for the security lapses on January 6th back to the Speaker of the House and the mayor of Washington, D.C. Harris, though, said in her view, the insurrection was part of a triad of events that Trump was involved in or commented on. She said that showed a pattern. She mentioned the riot in Charlottesville, Virginia, where Trump had a news conference in the lobby of Trump Tower the next day and made some controversial comments about the people who had participated in that. She had also said that his comment during the 2020 debate about the Proud Boys, about how they should stand back and stand by, was in her view a precursor to what actually happened on January 6th. Throughout the rest of the debate, there were some big issues such as Gaza that were tackled. Trump said several times that not only would the Gaza attack from Hamas onto Israel would not have happened had he been president. He also went on to say, that if he was the president of the United States, Russia would not have invaded Ukraine. He said he would end both wars quickly, didn't say how. And then there was a back and forth about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, about whether or not Donald Trump had set in motion as president the events that actually led to the deaths of American soldiers when the Biden administration finally did follow through on that withdrawal. At the end of the debate, there was a give and take also on Obamacare and health care. Trump saying that he was going to leave it in place for now unless he could figure out something better. Harris used that as a moment to invoke the name of John McCain, who had famously voted thumbs down one night to stop the Republican effort to do away with Obamacare. There were a lot of issues that went through, and there's going to be a lot of opinions on this debate, of course, as we go over the next couple of days. But that was basically the outline we wanted to go over with you as we'll continue to discuss this and dissect exactly what we saw tonight. So from here in Washington, D.C., I'm Tom Fitzgerald on Fox 5. We appreciate you joining us for this postscript of the 2024 presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. We will, of course, continue our coverage both on air and online, both on Fox Local and on the broadcast stations of Fox 5 here in D.C. For now, I'm Tom Fitzgerald. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Sorry if I'm not being helpful.
What?
Since you're supposed to speak at 11, so I apologize. But, over 4,000 views on YouTube, right?
Wow. Well, I don't know. He had told me I wasn't in the 10.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe because it got later, but you should all have been aware of that.
Well, I did try to have the conversation, so it's not like. Here, we put this. I got to plug this back in.
Hey, so we didn't know you had a head or it's rated for streaming. They want us to know if you're still going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, he's when we trying in the studio. He's
Can't be in two places at the same time. I tried to have this conversation with him. If they want me to do a digital show, I got to do a digital show.